Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Alice. We talk about books. We sometimes do some lifestyle and vlog content, although it's been a fair while. So if you're looking for someone to stick on in the background whilst you make yourself a meal, clean your room, or do that thing you've been putting off for the longest time, then I'm your gal. So consider hitting that subscribe button. Come on in, join the family. It is free and you can unsubscribe at any time. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your continued support. Let's get on with today's video. What are we talking about today? That is the question. That's right, we are back on the non-fiction. So, for those of you that don't know, I did 75 hard last year. I have started doing it again, which means I've been back into reading non-fiction. Enter the chat my recent read. This was Spoon-Fed by Tim Spector. Now, it was quite interesting. Obviously, it was kind of on topic, on brand, with doing the whole 75 hard, talking about eating, etc. So I will just put a quick little disclaimer in here. We are going to mention some things that can be a little bit triggering for some viewers and some members of the audience. So if you are not happy talking about food or calories, diets, etc., then maybe this is not the video for you. And that's okay. There's plenty of other things to go look at. Go look at my most recent video where I read a smaller author, new author's book, which was really, really cool. I enjoyed it. So go watch that instead, or, you know, there'll be some new ones soon. Let's get on with today's video. So I gave this book a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's kind of hard to rate non-fiction books, but I do think it was a good book. It just was a little bit, it just wasn't my favorite at times, and you guys will find out why. So this would be maybe like a 3.5 stars. I actually haven't rated it on Goodreads yet, but I think I'll probably give it 3 stars on Goodreads. For the most part, I did enjoy it a lot. Obviously, this book had zero spice. It's a non-fiction book, guys. We're not looking for spice there, are we? We're looking for it in one of our other many books, okay? So don't be looking here for that. If asked would I recommend, I would say yes. I think it was pretty eye-opening. It was different to what I've read before, and I really thought it had some good points in there. So I would say yes. But obviously, like I said before, if this theme is something that you're not too sure about, or maybe it's a little bit triggering for you, then obviously don't read it and stop watching this video, okay? Stop it, you. So just to give you sort of a brief overview, at the end he adds this 12-point plan, and this just sort of shows you some of the things that he addresses. So he talks about diversifying the food that you eat, about questioning the science, and don't believe in sort of quick solutions, quick sales from people that aren't even qualified to give you that. Don't actually be fooled by all the labels and the marketing, you know, when you walk in the shop and this is like high protein pancake. Well, no, it's not really high protein pancakes. It might just have a tiny little bit higher protein content. So there may be normal pancakes there with 4 grams of protein, but this one has 5 grams. A little bit misleading, especially with marketing as well. Also sort of understanding that you're not average when it comes to food. So every person's body is different, the amount they need is different, and what foods they need is different as well. So really kind of, it's your own journey. You don't need to compare yourself to other people. One fix for someone else might not be the same for you. So don't get into food ruts. So try to experiment, try new foods, see how they react with your body. Also try different meal times as well, because maybe you need energy at different points in the day to other people. So that's something that's quite cool, and I definitely going forward will be doing a few more experiments with myself. That sounds weird. I didn't mean it like that. Oops. I meant it as in I might try to diversify my meal times, what I'm eating as well. Yeah, this is again experimenting with meal times. I already said that. Using real food, not supplements. Obviously, people can say take this supplement for this, this, and this, and this, but there's never really enough science. And at the end of the day, like, we literally live on an earth where we were able to grow things. I feel like it's kind of telling us that's what we need, right? Avoiding ultra processed foods with over 10 ingredients. If it's got 10 ingredients in it, like, what are we doing? Unless it's some kind of like meal where it's like you've got noodles, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, fair enough. But if it's like 10 ingredients just to make up one sauce packet or something, we're not too sure, you know? Also trying to diversify your microbes in your gut as well. So trying different foods to help with that. Obviously things like yogurts and stuff are normally quite promoted on this, but there's also many other ways you can do this too. Obviously you need to read the book before this, and it's not sponsored by this book, but these are just some of the basic things. So, you know, if you don't have time to read it, this is kind of what he addresses, so you can kind of see if it's something you'd be interested in or not. There's a lot about blood glucose and blood spikes. I probably won't be looking into that too much right now, but that is also something it talks about. So if that's something that is interesting for you, it is in there too. It talks about reducing meat and fish consumption, which obviously is a little bit of a tricky one because people have different views on this, so you know, everyone's going to be different. But one of the main points that I did like about it was talking about checking the sustainability of the meat and the fish, so that was quite interesting, and I would definitely recommend at least like reading that chapter because I found that quite eye-opening. And then lastly, it's just about educating yourself, you know, educating yourself, educating others. I wouldn't say putting food pressure on people. I wouldn't say telling them you should be eating this because, as I literally just said, every person is different. But maybe just making people aware of things maybe you weren't aware of before reading this book, for example. So that's kind of an overview of what's going on. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty review, all right? The moment we've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. As always, we've brought in the trusty steed. It's gotta be done, okay? It's gotta be done. I say we crack on about it. What do you think? So I really liked how this book was written. It was very engaging, and the writing style did make it feel like you weren't reading something that was too maybe overly academic. And I don't mean that in terms of taking away from the author's status, I guess, because that's not true, but I just mean it actually felt accessible for the average person. I wasn't reading it thinking I have no idea what you're talking about right now. I felt like it was really written well for anyone to pick up and read, so I really liked that about the writing style. It also just felt like he was kind of, you know, narrating what was going on, and even though he's a major academic in his field, it just felt like he was just telling you the facts, like being like, look, you don't need to worry about this. This is what's going on. This is what you need to know. And I really thought that was clever because it makes it so accessible. It was definitely interesting to gain some new perspectives and viewpoints on kind of what the media feeds us and also the political side of food. I really did not realize how big this was, but kind of companies researching medical findings about their product and stuff when there's literally like little to no data, and how this is kind of taken at face value, and how governments will kind of push out these messages and change them all the time because there is never that true amount of research about it. And I just thought that was really interesting. I had no idea. I mean, I feel like everyone has like a little base awareness of, you know, the government's pushing out certain things, but it never occurred to me that it could be through companies kind of pushing that as well. I don't know, it didn't click. Maybe I'm silly, I don't know. But I thought that was really cool to be able to understand that. It was also really eye-opening about the medical system. So Tim actually says in this book that throughout an entire 6-year medical degree, they have 23 hours more or less dedicated to nutrition. Most of that is not even dedicated to day-to-day nutrition, it's dedicated to more complex parts of nutrition. Maybe an hour to 2 hours is actually the average person's nutritional needs and education. So when you go to a GP or a doctor, they need to give you nutritional advice. Normally they will push maybe a drug or a medicine because they actually don't have that training as such. And even within that, nutritionists and dietitians, like there's not enough of them to be able to combat the rise of obesity and things because there's not enough people that are medically trained to deal with it, if that makes sense. So I think that was really interesting because he said about how he wanted to push for that to be a bigger part of the degree because, you know, sometimes like doctors, especially if they practice unhealthy habits themselves, prescribing a healthy habit to a patient feels they kind of feel maybe a little bit embarrassed, or maybe they don't feel like they could give that advice because they don't follow it themselves. So I think that was really interesting to see. I never really thought about that before, or the perspective of it before. So that was quite an eye-opening moment that I enjoyed in this book as well. One quote, more or less, it's not really a quote, but what Tim mentioned in the book is that most of our medical professionals, if not all, are more trained to be able to deal with scurvy than they more qualified and more trained to deal with scurvy than they are obesity. And the chances of a medical professional seeing a case of scurvy in this day and age is pretty much so low and so rare compared to the amount of people that they see probably that need nutritional help. It's just crazy, the fact that they are more trained to deal with that. So he's really trying to open a conversation, start a change within the medical system as well, which I think is actually really, really cool. Whilst I enjoyed this book, there were a few negatives for me, you know, nothing too intense, nothing too major. I know kind of the main point was actually to encourage your own opinion, so he'd kind of give you all the facts, say what he thought, but also be like, you know, not everyone's the average person, you gotta find what works for you. And I liked that, but I did find that sometimes it would be a little bit confusing, because I feel like we would start here talking about this, we'd go on to this, then we'd go here and we'd kind of come back to this, but I'm not really sure what part I'm following. Do you know what I mean? I feel like sometimes it was a little too many opinions, or maybe we needed to like split it up in a slightly different way, just because I did definitely get confused a few times. For the most part, it was super easy to follow, but there were a few chapters in there that was a bit like, so are you saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, or what are you saying? What are you just presenting the facts? That got a little bit clouded in there. So sometimes I was sat there kind of rereading a page being like, you know, scratching my head, having a big think. This kind of made it feel a little bit like he was contradicting himself, which is not ideal in what you want in this kind of book. But for the most part, it was pretty on point, pretty there. I just felt like there was places where it got a little bit muddled for me. I'm not really sure if this was a stylistic choice, like it could have been a choice to kind of show how the government give you all these different mixed messages and you don't know what to follow. It could have been that. I think that might be grasping at straws a little bit, but if that was a stylistic choice, I mean, fantastic, but I do think it did get a little bit too confusing, so maybe in places it was better to just go straight to the point, you know? The 12 points, so the thing that I sort of read to you at the start, I thought that was really good, because that kind of actually gave an overlay at the end of just like everything that he mentioned, and that is actually a topic, so you can also then go into more research on that specific topic by yourself afterwards, which I think is really cool. I definitely think that going from this book, the biggest thing I'll be carrying with me, which I think I had started to do anyway, is just thinking about where your food comes from, the sustainability element of it, and kind of bringing in that more diverse, you know, trying new things, bringing in different things to your diet. I definitely want to do that going forward, so I feel like this book has really encouraged me to do that. I think that overall the book was enjoyable, it was definitely eye-opening, it gave me some real points to think on, and I feel like I learned some great lessons from it, so I definitely would recommend, if this is something you're interested in, you want to learn a little bit more about nutrition, a little bit more about the politics of food, then definitely pick up Food, no, I was gonna say Food for Thought, that's not what it's called. Spoon Fed by Tim Spector. Okay, so give it a read. If you have read this, let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't read it and you are going to, also let me know in the comments down below and we can get a conversation started. Okay, so without further ado, I think I've waffled on long enough. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Have you subscribed? Thank you very much, and as always, until the next one, I'll see you then. Bye. That you maybe weren't aware.